Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar presentation, Automate Your Image and Video Processes with Cloudinary APIs, brought to you by Cloudinary. Joining us today are our presenters, Marissa Ghassemian, a technical marketing specialist, and Amit Khanal, a senior solutions architect. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to our presenters.
All right, hello everyone. So welcome to today's session, 5 tips on scaling your image and video processes with Cloudinary. So most of our customers are very familiar with the image and video optimization use case, which enables you to deliver your visual media fast and at scale. So with this webinar, our goal is to share some tips and tricks beyond optimization on how you can take your visual media experience to the next level with Cloudinary APIs while saving precious resources. So with that being said, let's get started. So as you know, I'm Marissa Ghassemian. I'm a technical marketing specialist here at Cloudinary, and I am here today with my colleague Amit.
Hi guys, my name is Amit Khanal, and I am the Senior Solutions Architect at Cloudinary.
All right. So we will be hosting this session between the two of us. We bring in a combined knowledge of 7 years of helping clients scale their image and video processes with the help of our APIs. So we certainly know a thing or two when it comes to pain points with Cloudinary customers. So please feel free to ask questions all throughout, and we will try our best to get them all answered via the chat here. So the agenda for today, we're going to pretty much get started with a quick overview of Programmable Media, which is our product for developers. And then we'll spend the majority of the time covering 5 topics to help you scale your image and video processes, which consists of eager transformations, delivering assets at the desired size, adding overlays, responsive breakpoints, and automated cropping. So let's get into it. So we have programmable media. So for those who are not familiar with programmable media, let's have a quick overview of how it can help. So programmable media is our core offering for developers. It's our API-based product that enables developers to build engaging visual experiences at scale for their websites and apps by enabling them to automate manual repetitive tasks associated with images and videos. Programmable media offers 2 key capabilities. The first one is automation of your image and video supply chain. So think about the manual processes you may be doing daily to make an image or video ready for your website and app, like editing, cropping, adding overlays. All of these can be automated. And some of our customers have saved up to 90% of the time spent on these processes previously, so dramatically reducing the publishing time. The second key capability that we offer is to help you store, organize, and manage the vast amount of images and videos in an intelligent way, so powered by AI. So think about auto tagging, auto focusing on a certain object, content moderation for user-generated content, also known as UGC, which can be automated through our APIs. And since we work with a wide range of companies across multiple industries with different tech stacks, we're built to integrate and play well with other systems. Now, there is certainly a lot more to programmable media. So for those of you who are not familiar with the product, I'd highly recommend reading more about it. But for now, let's get started on those tips. Oh, sorry. Looks like we got a little ahead of ourselves here. So tip 1 would be to generate assets before they are requested. So, I mean, what does that mean? If you're not familiar with the concept of eager transformations, let me explain it. So Cloudinary can either transform your assets on demand when first accessed by your visitors or during the asset upload as an eager transformation. So when transforming assets on demand, aka the initial request, all transformed assets are generated on the fly, stored, cached, and delivered via CDN. This can be an issue because not only does this process take more time, meaning slower loading pages, but the time required for generating a transformation depends on various factors, such as the original asset dimensions, the asset file size, the requested dimensions, applied effects and transformations. So load times can be quite skewed. But note that once the asset is generated for the first time, the transformed asset is henceforth cached and ready to be delivered via CDN for all subsequent requests, meaning that it will now be delivered faster, leading to lower latency and faster loading times. So although the eager approach does require a little bit of planning, as you need to specify which transformations to request beforehand, it's a great way to ensure that all assets are ready for fast delivery, even for the first visitors to your site. And this is especially useful for video transformations, transformations that perform AI analyses or other asynchronous operations, such as those performed by some Cloudinary add-ons. So now that you know about it, how can you do this? So one way is via an upload preset. I've got a little screenshot here just kind of showing you where you would turn that on and off within a preset. Presets are great because they essentially allow you to define a set of actions upon upload. So if you essentially know that you're going to need to generate X, Y, and Z transformations upon upload. Let's say, for example, you'll need a thumbnail for a product page. You'll need maybe some images for your website, whether it's the hero banner, you know it's going to be used in that particular use case. You'll know what these sizes are, so you can specify them on upload to be generated and ready to go. So that's a great way to pretty much streamline your processes via an upload preset. And upload presets can be used with the API or the UI. So whether you're technical or non-technical and use the UI more, you can define eager transformations in both ways. The second way would be through the upload method, so which would be the initial upload call. So here you can see in this code snippet, and we will be showing all snippets in Node, just FYI. So you can see here we're calling the upload method, and you can see that we have defined eager here as a parameter. And then inside that, we're defining two different eager transformations to be generated for this sample image. So here you can see for the sample image, it's one, going to upload the original asset as is, and then two, we're going to generate these two eager transformations. So one transformation is going to be taking the sample image and then setting it to a width of 400, a height of 300, and then having a crop mode of pad. And the second transformation will have a width of 260, a height of 200, a crop mode of crop, and then setting gravity to north. So of course, there's tons of transformations that you can apply in an eager transformation. This is just two samples of what it would look like. But you can define multiple transformations or just a single transformation when generating eager assets. And then the next way you could do it is with the explicit method. And so the reason you would use the explicit method would be for existing images. So say you already have assets uploaded, they're in your media library, they're ready to go, but you want to go back and generate a bunch of different transformations. You can go in and pretty much do something very similar here. You can see that we're calling the explicit method rather than the upload. And then we're setting the type to upload because you have to do that with this particular method. And then we are pretty much setting a similar setup here with the eager parameter and then setting in the different transformation parameters here. And then I have an example link here to show you. So let me go ahead and take you to that just so you can kind of understand. Oh, let me show this full, get out of full screen here so you can see we are in the browser. So I have a larger image here called bouquet, and let me show you how this would essentially work. So for example, I'm going to try and create a transformation that I haven't yet. So I'm setting the width to 3356. I know it's larger than that. And then we'll just set round to 46. And let's add in an effect, which we'll just do sepia here. So once I request this, which is now, you'll see that the browser is loading, still loading, and there you go. So that can take a little bit of time. So that's why you would essentially want to generate eager transformations, because if you have a lot of images that are requested on your site for the first time, if you're doing a new page or a refresh on a page and you have all of these slow loading assets, that can really add to loading time. So you can see just how important having eager transformations are. And just to kind of show you what that may look like programmatically, let me go ahead and show you in Visual Studio. Okay. So here, let me uncomment this. So here would be the first example of the upload call. You can see that just like in the example, we're calling cloudinary.uploader.upload, and I'm setting in the asset that I want to upload. So here I've got it located in my assets and images folder. We've got sample.jpg, and then I am specifying that eager parameter here, followed along with some simple transformations, setting width, height, and crop mode. The second one is the width, height, crop, and gravity, just like you had seen. So let me go ahead and clear this out, kind of show you what it would look like running it from the console here. So you can see what a response would look like. This particular file is called webinar.js. Oh, I need to put node here. So once we run this, you can see that, oh, 1 second here. I realized I forgot to hit save. We will have to edit this out. Okay, so let me run this. So here, when running this, we would show node webinar.js. So now you can see we got a response from uploading this particular asset. So this is what the response would essentially look like here. We've got our asset, we've got our new public ID, version number, we've got signature, height, width of the original image. So there's a lot that's printed out in the response here, but what we are looking for would be the eager transformation. So you can see as part of the response, it does show eager here, and then it shows the first transformation that was generated. As you can see, we had set it to have a width of 400, height of 300, a crop mode of pad, and you can see that it's showing the image dimensions here along with the format and the corresponding URL. And then it also shows the second eager transformation that we generated here, and that's pretty much giving the same parameters, the width, the height, showing what the transformation actually was, followed by the URL. And we do also give the secure URL as well. And then just to kind of show what it will look like here, so let's comment this back out. And then you can see that we have the explicit example as we just went over. So we can uncomment that. So you can see here we had set the function to explicit, the type to upload, and we once again set the eager transformations to be applied. So it's quite similar in what you would do, but then this would be for assets that are already in your library. So actually you would want to take this out, and then it would be just sample because that would be the public ID. And then that's when you would run this code.
So for tip number 2, I'll talk about how Cloudinary can be used to render images that are the most optimal in web pages. This is one of the most popular features of Cloudinary, right? Images and videos in their original size typically are too big to render on the web pages, right? Most of the images or videos that we take through our mobile devices are in multiple megabytes in size, which obviously cannot be loaded into the pages as is. So instead, Cloudinary offers, through various SDKs, a way to generate image or video tags with the appropriate transformations to resize and scale these images and videos. Why would you say we want to deliver these assets at the desired size? Because delivering them in their original size uses up a lot of bandwidth. A lot of bandwidth gets wasted. It slows down the site considerably if you're loading megabytes of images and multiple images in web pages. And at the same time, there may be other algorithms out there that can resize these images, but they may not take into account some of the important aspects of the images when they're being resized. So once they do get resized, however, it will help with lowering the bandwidth on the page and subsequently increasing the performance of the page. So let's talk about how we can perform the resize and at the same time generate these image and video tags on the web pages. As I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of SDKs that can do this. For this example, however, we're going to look at a JavaScript SDK. So here I'm showing you a few code snippets that can take in a public ID of an image, which you see here on the left, and then using the syntax here, it's going to generate an image tag with the full URL of that image, right? So this here itself, by itself, will just render the original image. We can now add transformations on this image, which is to resize it. In this example, we're saying resize the image, which is sample.jpg, to a height of 200, a width of 300, and then also crop it using this crop mode. Again, if you have, in addition to the transformations, if you also want to add any custom classes, CSS classes onto the image tag, an alt tag, you can do that all through the SDK. So that was for image. This slide here shows you how to do the same for videos. So video tag, Cloudinary.video, you would pass in the public ID along with the transformations, and this would actually create a structure like this on the web page, right? It would have a video tag along with all the formats for different browsers. WebM in this case could be for Chrome-based browsers, MP4 for Safari, for example, and OGV for any other browser that supports it. And if a browser does not support any one of these formats, then it would get this message instead. So all of this here can be done by the SDK, and I'm going to now show you how this can be done in code. So here I have a simple page to kind of show you how this can all be put together. I am importing a Cloudinary core JavaScript, and I have some other helper libraries to kind of make things easy for us. So what I have is I have simple placeholders for images. I have image 1, image 2, image 3, image 4, and video 1. And on the JavaScript section, what I've done is I've initialized my JavaScript to point to the demo sub account. So once you sign up with Cloudinary, or if you have Cloudinary account, every account has a cloud name. This is that cloud name here. And from here on, I'm just using the image tags that I talked about earlier. So I initialize Cloudinary, put that into a variable CLD. From here on, I can generate my image tag. In this case, it generates an image tag with country for image country sunset.jpg, and I'm just putting that image onto this div that I had earlier. Same for the other one, image 2. I'm generating an image tag of lady.jpg. Again, I'm going to show how these look on a web page in just a second. In this case, for lady.jpg, I'm also adding an alt attribute, have a custom class, a CSS class here, followed by a bunch of transformations to scale down my image, right? And not just scaling it down, I'm also adding some effects here, grayscale. Again, I'll show you what this looks like in just a second. Image 3, a similar concept. I just have different types of transformations to kind of show you the variations of this approach. Image 4, I have a set of different transformations as well. And lastly, I have a video example here to show you how video transformations could be done. Taken a video of a dog, set the height and width to 200 by 300, crop it. I'm adding the video controls on it as well. And then if the browser does not support the video, I have a custom message here that says the videos are not supported for this browser. So let's see how these actually look like. Here, this is the page that I have created. As you can see, I have image 1 here. I'm just going to this was my first image, and let me show you what this looks like. So this is the very first image. If you remember, I just have Cloudinary country sunset without any transformations, and I'm rendering that as is. So as you can see here, this image got rendered as is. There is no transformation applied to it. Moving on to the next image here. This is the image of the lady here. In this case, I applied transformations of crop with a fill mode, changed it to grayscale, set the width and height to 500 by 800. Again, let's quickly look at what that looks like here. I set the crop mode, set the effect to grayscale, and set the width and height to 500 by 800. Moving on, I have another example here of another image here, basketball in net. In this case, I'm using a transformation called gravity, again, setting width and height. Right, so just different variations based on any specific needs that you have. You can use all of that through the SDKs. And lastly, this is another interesting one. I have an image here where I'm instructing through transformations to maintain the aspect ratio at 1 using a crop mode. And I'm also putting this into what's called a round mode that Marissa showed earlier on. R max means show this into a circular mode, and that's what it does here. So just to kind of show you what that looks like in the code here, I have transformations specified here with the aspect ratio of 1, width, specify the width, crop and gravity settings, and at the same time set the radius to max. And lastly, for video, if you see here, these are my transformations. And looking at this video here, here. So this video, a poster image is automatically created with the dimensions that I specified. Along with that, it also generates 3 different URLs with different formats and uses the custom messaging if the browser does not support any of the formats. So again, this goes to show you how you can easily use the Cloudinary SDKs to generate different image and video tags without having to create them manually and specify transformations as needed to automatically scale these images down and ultimately increase the performance on the website. That's it for tips 2.
Okay, so tip 3. So tip 3 is adding overlays to your images and videos at scale. So adding overlays or layers in general, whether it be overlays or underlays, is a very popular use case as it allows you to brand or watermark your assets, add personalization such as customized text, display assets on products such as showing an image on a shirt or a mug if you're e-commerce focused. And in today's world of ever-increasing demands for privacy, you can hide all detected faces in an image. In the past, all of these have been time-consuming processes, but it doesn't have to be anymore. So let's take a look at how this can be done at scale. So how can you do this? So it would essentially be applying these transformations as overlays, but one way that you can do this programmatically is with the Cloudinary image function that you see here. So in these code snippets, the first one is essentially adding an overlay of an image that exists in my current account. And then the second would be overlaying remote assets. So still using the same image function, still being applied on sample.jpg, but here you can see in this second method that we're actually specifying a remote URL. In this particular example, it's still a Cloudinary URL, but it's from a different account. So there are 2 different ways. So whether you have assets that you may want to overlay within your account, you can do that. If you have remote assets that you want to overlay, you can do that as well. So let's show you, or let me show you what that will look like here. Okay, So here, taking a look at the code examples, let's once again, we're past the explicit example here. So now I want to show you that there are two different ways to do this as well. So as I just showed in the example, we have this cloudinary.image code snippet, but you can also do this with a cloudinary.url, and I'll show you the difference in a second here. So note that just like in the code snippet, I'm specifying sample.jpg, and then I'm specifying a transformation of which you can see I'm specifying the overlay parameter. And this is the public ID of the asset that I want to overlay. So here I'm going to be overlaying the Cloudinary blue icon on top of this sample.jpg image. And this icon overlay is going to have a width of 100. We're going to specify the gravity to be southwest, which essentially just tells you where you want to place the image overlay. Southwest is kind of a compass direction, so it'll be in the bottom left corner. And then I have an X and Y parameter set here. For those of you who may not want it to just be in that very bottom corner, you can use X and Y parameters as well to further customize the placement. So of course, it'll be up to you. Everybody's branding looks different, but this is just an example of how you can overlay an icon. So let's go ahead and run this here in the terminal so you can see what this looks like. We'll get all of that out of the way. And we'll once again run this file. So node webinar.js. And so what you're actually seeing here being printed back is actually an HTML image tag. So that's what this cloudinary.image is going to give you. It's essentially going to give you an image tag, and embedded in that is the URL for this particular asset. So here you can see we've got the gravity specified. L signifies the overlay. So that's why we have L Cloudinary icon blue. We've got the width and the X and Y parameters. And then just to show you a quick difference before I show you what the URL would look like, let's comment that out. And then we'll see what the URL actually spits out when we run it here. So now that we run this, you can see that we're actually just getting back the URL here. So these are two ways in which you can embed these Cloudinary URLs, image tags within your code. So it depends on how you would like to set it up, of course. It is up to you, but you will have these URLs and image tags ready to go to be embedded within your code. And so let's go ahead and follow this link to see what we would get. So that's essentially opening up the URL that we had here, and you can see we now have the blue Cloudinary icon in the bottom left corner, aka southwest, so you can see just what that would look like applying the transformation. So with that being said, let me pass it back over to Amit for the next tip.
Okay, so for the next tip, tip number 4, I'm going to talk about how Cloudinary can help users automatically deliver responsive images and videos for their websites. So websites today are accessed from different devices, which have different viewports, right? As such, they have different requirements in terms of how they need to be rendered, such as different crop settings, different width and height, which I talked about earlier, and so forth. Creating these variations of images and videos manually would take a lot of time. So to address that, users can instead generate these different variations using Cloudinary's responsive solutions. So using responsive solutions or responsive breakpoints would eliminate the need to manually create all of these different size images yourself. As I mentioned earlier, it'll also help you avoid generating and delivering too many image versions or too few of them. And lastly, it'll help you display generate and display these images at the appropriate resolutions for a better visual experience. So that obviously translates to having a great experience on multiple devices for different users across the board. And as a tip, you can also choose to include a DPR transformations, what we support, which is mainly used for high-end Retina devices such as your iPhones and iPads, where you can use the DPR transformation to enhance these images even further. So let's talk about how you can use the responsive solution from Cloudinary. Through Cloudinary, we have a reference website for breakpoints called responsivebreakpoints.com, where you can go in and upload any image or look at some sample images to see how that image can be broken down for different viewports and breakpoints. I'm going to quickly show that to you here. So this is the website here, and there are some sample images. I'm going to pick the dog image here. And for this dog image here, the resolution that I'm seeking is between 200 to 1080. The side step, the incremental step for across the resolutions is somewhere here, 20 kilobyte, and the maximum images that I want generated is 20. Right? Obviously, this is a lot. I can change this down to 7, for example, and hit regenerate. But let's say if I were to say 20, okay, so this already has a example here for 7 images. So in this case, the first image that the breakpoint that got generated is 200 with height of 133. It also tells you what the file size would look like. And if you kind of hover over the image, or if you click on the image here, this is what that image would look like at that breakpoint. Moving on, for width of 1056, this is what the image would look like, and so forth, right? And it also gives you a nice visual representation of the reduction for each of the different breakpoints here. So using this as a reference, you can define your own breakpoint settings for your images. Obviously, this is a reference site. You don't have to use it if you have different mechanisms to do it, but this goes to show you how it can be done. So with Cloudinary, you can either generate the breakpoints at the time of upload, or you can do so after the upload. Or alternatively, you can also do these breakpoints and create these breakpoints on demand on the fly, which I'm sure many of you know through UAuto-based transformations, right? But this here, we have an example that shows how to do the upload, generate the breakpoints at the time of upload. So this code snippet here is for Ruby. You could, as I mentioned earlier, we have all different SDKs that you can do this in. In this case, we're uploading dog.jpg, and we're saying generate responsive breakpoints, minimum width of 200, maximum of 1,000. The max number of images that should be generated are 20. And this is an important flag here. This is create derived. This instructs Cloudinary whether to create these derivatives at the time of upload, or just return these URLs for now. Meaning, if these URLs are returned for now, if this is set to false right now, this derivative will not be created in Cloudinary, right? So it will wait until this URL is requested, and at that time, the image will be created. But if you choose to create these ahead of time, set that to true, and all of these different derivatives will be created and ready for use. So step number 1 was to define the breakpoints. Step number 2 is to now do the upload and specify the breakpoints and either create the derivatives or not. And step number 3 is to now finally render these images or videos. And there are 2 approaches to render these images or videos on the website. One is you can automate it using Cloudinary.js. I'm going to show you an example of this in a moment. The other approach is to use the browser native source sets capability. We have a screenshot here of what that looks like. And again, I'm going to show this, show an example of this as well. Oops, sorry about that. So now let's dive into the example. First, let me go into the code here. For the Cloudinaries, the automating responsiveness through Cloudinary. So Cloudinary provides a JavaScript that can be embedded onto any page and using that JavaScript, it will automatically request the appropriate sized image based on the viewport that the image is being rendered in. So in this, if you see here, I have an image tag, and instead of the regular source attribute for image, I have a data source attribute where I specify my URL for the image, and instead of width here, the value for the width, I'm saying width can be auto. And I have a class that indicates to the JavaScript that this image tag should be monitored when the page loads. So using this, the JavaScript now understands that this image tag, if W auto exists in the URL of this image tag, it should replace it with the appropriate numeric value based on the viewport that this image is being requested in. So let's look at an example of this. I have Cloudinary responsive here. I'm just gonna make this window just small here. Here, let me kind of go here. Let me bring up the developers console here. This is, so clear this out. If I refresh this page, I see that the puppy that got returned has a width of 500. Now, even though I specified W auto, which you can see here on the side, the actual image that got returned and got rendered on the browser has W of auto. As you can see here, it still has the data source of W auto, but a source attribute has been added by the JavaScript, which has the actual numeric value for the width. And moving on, let's expand this window a bit here to see how it works here. Now, as you can see here, the first size that came back was a width of 500. The next size, because the window is a tad bigger, the next size is 700. So in this case, the JavaScript automatically understands based on the viewport that it needs to request a higher width image. Now, let me keep increasing this and see what that looks like. So here for this viewport, the size that got requested, the width that got requested was 1100. So as you can see here, from a user standpoint, you really don't have to worry about adding all of these different images into Cloudinary, creating these thing responsive width and height manually. You can all leave it up to the JavaScript to do the job, and Cloudinary, whether those images are those derivatives exist or they don't exist, they can at real time be pulled onto the website based on the size of the container that they need to be rendered in. So this is the Cloudinary's JavaScript-based solution. The other solution that I wanted to show was the responsive source sets. Let me show you what that looks like. So most of you would be familiar with this. In this case, I'm using the native capability of the browser, where I specify the max width the image can be on, and defines different source sets for different viewport sizes here. So for 200 width, this is what's being requested. This would be requested from Cloudinary. For 961 width viewport, this would be requested, and so forth. So let's see this in action. Now let me make this window small, open up the developer console here, and so initially the size that got requested was 961. Now if I slowly increase this, okay, here the size that got requested was 1400, width of 1400. So this is without the JavaScript. There's no JavaScript import here. Browser natively understands what the viewport is, and based on these configurations or definitions here, it will request the original, the appropriate image for that container. So again, just to kind of recap what I talked about. Responsive solutions. Cloudinary offers a responsive solution to automatically create different breakpoints for your web pages. Using those breakpoints as a reference, you can upload these images and define those breakpoints. Cloudinary can generate those derivatives right then and there, or wait for you to access those URLs and then generate those derivatives. Once that setup is done, you can then choose to use the responsive solution by one of two approaches. One is using the Cloudinary JavaScript approach, where it'll monitor these image tags and appropriately request the correct width and height image. Or you can use a native browser source-set capability, where browser decides what size images to request based on your source-set definition. That's it for tip 4.
Okay, so let's move on to the last tip, which is tip 5. And tip 5 is substituting manual cropping with our AI-powered cropping technique, which we call G-Auto. So Cloudinary's intelligent gravity selection capabilities ensure that the most interesting areas or specified areas of each asset are selected as the main focus for the requested crop. This is not only for assets with faces, but for many content types. So depending on what's specified, each asset is analyzed individually to find the optimal region to include while cropping. So this means that you can crop your assets and not have to worry about if the focal point is still being displayed when applying G-Auto. Automatic cropping is a fantastic way to not only help you save time, but it's also a great way to free your teams from completing these manual tasks, allowing you to streamline your publishing workflows. So what does this actually look like? So I won't go too programmatically into it, as you guys now have seen these image functions. This is pretty much how you would specify them, and I want to focus a little bit more on what each different one does. So let's start with just G-Auto here. So here you can see we're using the image tag function, we're specifying the image. Here we've got the basketball in net, and then we're setting the gravity parameter to auto. Then we're specifying the height, the width, and the crop. So let me show you what that would look like in the browser here. So we'll go ahead and navigate to this particular URL. And so you can see here, oh, sorry, I skipped a slide forward. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at this G-Auto URL here. So this is the basketball in net. And you can see we have G-Auto specified, but without that, if we were to see the original asset, it's actually this whole image here. So once we're applying G-Auto and we're cropping it, we are ensuring that we're still focusing in on this particular area and not showing just a blurred crowd in the background there. So that would be what using G-Auto looks like. The next would be G-Auto North. So that is more so, or not G-Auto North, but G-Auto with a specified direction, a compass direction here. So that definitely helps. And I know I covered it a bit earlier, but you can still see here that we're specifying the gravity to be north in this particular example. So what that would look like here is we've got our sample image that you can see. And then we have it specified to G North and specifying the crop, the height, and the width. And so if you really wanted to, you could change it to, as you had seen earlier, if you want it to be northwest, you could do that. Or if you want it to be northeast, you would essentially just plug that in, whether it's within your code or in the URL itself. You would just enter that, and now you can see that we've moved around to a different part of the image. So of course, if you know you just want to focus on a particular region, you can use this compass direction, and even as I showed you earlier, you can use X and Y parameters to really hone in on an area. But essentially for this particular use of G-Auto, you would just be showing a particular region of the asset. So the next would be G-Auto Face. So this is a great way if you know that you're going to have faces in an image, depending on what your use case may be, and you want to make sure that these faces are the focal point. This is when you would specify gravity face. And then, of course, once again, we're specifying height, width, and crop mode. So what would that look like here as an example? So here you can see we've got G face specified, and we've got this face pretty much front and center for this cropped image. So what does the image look like when not using this? The original asset is a girl in her pretty much upper torso, along with a butterfly and a whole jungle in the background. So you can see that we, by specifying G face, are able to make sure that she is still in the picture. And then we do also have G faces if you have more than one face in there, so you can use that as well if you know that you'll have multiple people, and that essentially will look at how to fit the predominant faces in an image. Of course, you may have a group of people to the left and maybe one to the right, so that will analyze the image and say, hey, there's a group of people here, let's focus on them, rather than that single face on the right. And then the next method would be G auto object. This is a really cool way to scale your assets using G auto. There's pretty much a ton of categories and objects that you can specify here. I would highly recommend looking at the documentation for this because it is so vast. I'm not sure what the count is at the moment, but I believe it's over 600 objects at this point. It might even be more, to be honest. But you can see here, so for example, this is more of perhaps an e-commerce use case. If you're selling kitchen items, you can see that we've got a picture of a kitchen, and then we actually want to focus in on the sink here. So we're setting gravity to auto and then specifying the object that we want to find within that image. So what is that going to look like? Let's take a look in the browser here. So here you can see perfectly we've got a sink front and center and as the focal point. So if we did not have that specified, what would this actually look at? So let's take this out. We'll show the original asset. And you can see there is a ton of items that are actually showed here. And so by putting in that G auto sync, it was able to find the sink in the image and make that the focal point. And if you wanted to, you could also specify G auto refrigerator, G auto microwave. And there's really just a ton of objects that you can look for within an image. So for those of you who will find this useful, I would highly recommend going through that list and seeing how that can help you, whether it's clothing, whether it's cars. There's all types of objects that you can find and focus in on when cropping. And then the last would be G auto for video. So this is also a great way, of course, for videos, because as we all know, focusing in on a video can really be a tough thing to do. So essentially with G auto for video, we're going to try and analyze frame for frame the objects that are in it. So in this particular example with the ship, we're going to have a moving ship throughout the video here, and this would essentially focus in on that ship throughout the duration of while it's in frame. So let me show you what that would look like. So you can see we've got that ship here. It's starting out from the left, and then it's pretty much going to stay in focus throughout here. We specified this to be to have a width of 300. We're using the crop mode fill, and then we pretty much just specified G auto and then having the aspect ratio of 1:1. So you can see that video, or that specific transformation pretty much kept the video in focus. And so you can of course use this for all types of videos. For example, if you have models that are walking through showing outfits, this will keep the model in focus as they may walk kind of not always in a straight line. They're walking across the stage or whatever it may be. That will keep them in focus. So G auto for video is a great way to keep all the focal point in the frame every time. So those are pretty much the different ways in which you can use gauto. Of course, you can see here I was using the Cloudinary video tag function in this particular example, but of course you can specify them, whether it's an image tag, a video tag. You can use these all throughout your code to have these embedded with their specified transformations ready to go. So of course you can use this at scale to have all of your images and videos cropped with the focal points always displaying. So that is essentially it for our tips and tricks. I hope you guys learned a lot today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please feel free to follow up with us. We're happy to reach out and answer questions. You can find Amit and I on LinkedIn. Please feel free to reach out anytime. And for those of you who may have questions, trying to implement these tips and tricks, we also have a great support team that you can reach out to 24/7. And of course, our documentation is your best friend. And so feel free to go through that as well. And yeah, so I hope you had a great time with us. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right, and with that, DZone would like to thank Marissa and Amit for a fantastic presentation. And DZone would also like to thank Cloudinary for providing the audience with a great webinar. And lastly, thank you to everyone who tuned in today. We hope you learned something new that will help you in your developer career.